Anxiety often disguises itself as chaos. Too many thoughts, too many demands, too many unfinished ends pulling at your attention all at once. You may believe life has become overwhelming, when in truth, it has simply become unordered. The soul was never meant to live in disorder. Disorder strains the mind, weakens confidence, and invites fear. When things feel scattered, anxiety rushes in not as punishment, but as a signal that alignment has been lost. Most people try to quiet anxiety by forcing calm. They distract themselves, push through, or tell themselves to relax. But anxiety does not dissolve through pressure. It dissolves through order. Order is not control. It is cooperation with a deeper intelligence that knows how things fit together. When order returns, the mind naturally rests. You may feel as though everything in your life demands attention at once. Decisions, responsibilities, emotions, unfinished plans, but nothing truly demands urgency when it is placed correctly. Anxiety thrives on confusion. It multiplies when priorities blur and direction disappears. But when life is organized inwardly, the outer world follows without struggle. Many believe organization is a practical skill, not a spiritual one. Yet disorder is never neutral. It drains energy, clouds perception, and invites fear into places where peace once lived. The mind cannot be calm when it feels everything is unfinished. It keeps scanning, checking, rehearsing, not because it wants to torment you, but because it believes something vital will be missed. When life lacks structure, anxiety tries to become structure. It stays alert so you don't forget, fall behind, or fail. And in doing so, it exhausts you. You were never meant to live in constant mental supervision. Life has its own rhythm, its own order, its own intelligence, but it responds only when invited. Order begins with agreement that things can be placed, that nothing needs to be carried all at once, that clarity is possible without force. The moment you begin organizing life correctly, something shifts immediately. The breath deepens, the shoulders drop, the mind slows. These are not coincidences. They are signs of alignment returning. Anxiety does not leave all at once. It loosens gradually as trust is restored. As each area of life is placed where it belongs, fear loses its assignment. Most people attempt to organize their outer world first. Lists, schedules, plans. But outer organization without inner order only adds pressure. The foundation must be laid inwardly. There is a sequence to order. When followed, it removes anxiety naturally. When ignored, even the best efforts feel heavy. You may have noticed how peace arrives unexpectedly. When one small thing is resolved, one decision made, one boundary placed, order restores energy instantly. Life becomes manageable, not when everything is done, but when everything is assigned. Anxiety grows when you try to hold everything equally important, but nothing is equally important. There is hierarchy, there is sequence, there is timing. The mind relaxes when it knows what comes first and what can wait. Organization is not about perfection. It is about clarity, and clarity is calming. You do not need to fix your entire life today. That belief alone creates anxiety. You only need to place the next thing correctly. Each step toward order reduces fear. Each decision made from calm restores authority. When life is organized, intuition becomes audible again. Guidance returns. You stop guessing and start knowing. This is why disorder often follows emotional overwhelm. Feelings scatter focus. Focus scattered invites fear. Fear convinces you that everything is urgent. It is usually a symptom of disorganization. When you stop reacting to pressure and begin arranging life deliberately, anxiety has nowhere to stay. Peace does not come from doing more. It comes from doing what belongs to now. Order restores confidence because it restores trust. Trust that you can handle what is in front of you without carrying what is not. Many people live with anxiety because they never learned how to place their life into order gently, without strain. Yet the moment order begins, the mind responds gratefully. It no longer needs to race. It no longer needs to rehearse disaster. Anxiety fades when the mind no longer feels responsible for everything at once. There is a natural system that brings order without pressure, a sequence that clears confusion and restores peace step by step. Each step removes a layer of mental noise. Each step returns authority to where it belongs. You will notice as order increases, fear decreases. Not because you forced it away, but because it is no longer needed. Life stops feeling heavy when it is organized correctly. You regain energy without effort. Sleep improves. Decisions simplify. Confidence returns quietly. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about becoming aligned. Order does not limit you. It frees you. Anxiety is not your enemy. It is your signal that order is waiting to be restored. And once order is restored, anxiety dissolves on its own. Stay with this message, not to rush ahead, but to allow clarity to settle. Because when life is organized in the right sequence, peace is no longer something you chase. It becomes the natural state you return to, one clear step at a time. When life feels disordered, the mind grows anxious, not because circumstances are unmanageable, but because authority has been misplaced. Disorder is never the result of too many duties alone. It is the result of no clear command. When no governing principle is recognized inwardly, every thought demands attention, every task feels urgent, and the soul grows weary under the illusion that it must hold everything at once. I have observed again and again that anxiety is not born from hardship, but from confusion about who is in charge. When the mind believes it must govern life by itself, it grows tense and watchful. It scans constantly, fearing that something will slip through unnoticed. Yet this vigilance does not protect, it exhausts. The first step toward order is not arranging outer affairs, but restoring inner authority. Until this is done, all outer attempts at organization add pressure rather than relief. One may make lists, schedules, and plans, yet still feel restless, because the true source of disorder has not been addressed. Authority must be established inwardly before order can appear outwardly. Many live as though fear were the natural ruler of life. Fear decides what is urgent, what is dangerous, what must be done at once. Fear shouts, demands, interrupts, and when fear governs, peace has no voice. Yet fear was never meant to rule. It is a poor commander. It issues many orders, but provides no rest. Divine intelligence, on the other hand, governs quietly. It arranges without strain. It places each thing in its proper sequence, never asking the mind to carry what does not belong to the present moment. Anxiety arises when fear attempts to replace this intelligence. I have known many who said, "My life feels out of control." In truth, their lives were not out of control at all. They were simply being directed by fear rather than by order. The moment authority was returned to its rightful place, calm returned naturally. Authority is not force. It is certainty. Certainty does not rush. It does not shout. It does not argue with circumstances. It stands. When inner authority is restored, the mind no longer reacts to every demand. It begins to choose. And choice is the beginning of order. The disordered mind reacts. The ordered mind directs. I once knew a woman whose days felt overwhelming. She woke already anxious, thinking of all that must be done. Nothing had gone wrong, yet she felt constantly behind. When I asked her who was directing her day, she answered honestly, "My worries." That answer revealed everything. Worry had become her ruler. It decided her pace, her priorities, her thoughts, and worry is a tyrant. It never finishes its work. When she learned to begin each day with the quiet acknowledgement, "Divine order governs this day," her experience changed. Tasks still appeared, but they no longer crowded her mind. Each thing came in its proper time. Anxiety loosened its grip. This was not coincidence. It was alignment. The soul rests when it knows it is governed by intelligence rather than by fear. Many believe order means rigidity, strictness, or harsh discipline. This is not true order. True order is gentle. It allows movement, but not confusion. It permits rest, but not neglect. True order feels calm. The moment inner authority is restored, the body responds. The shoulders lower. The breath deepens. The mind slows. These are signs that governance has returned. Governance is a relief. I have often said that man lives under law, not chance. Disorder appears only when law is ignored or misunderstood. Anxiety is the signal that law is waiting to be acknowledged. The mind becomes anxious when it believes it must supervise everything. It takes on duties never assigned to it. It attempts to manage timing, outcomes, and reactions all at once. Yet the mind was never meant to manage life. It was meant to cooperate with it. Cooperation begins when authority is recognized. One must say inwardly, without emotion and without strain, "I am under divine order." These words are not a request. They are a declaration. Declaration restores position. Position determines experience. When position is corrected inwardly, experience must follow. I have observed that those who begin with this acknowledgement find their lives reorganizing almost immediately, not because circumstances change instantly, but because perception does. The anxious mind responds to everything as a threat. The ordered mind responds selectively. Selectivity is peace. Peace does not require that everything be resolved. It requires that everything be placed. Placement is the next step of order, but placement cannot occur until authority is established. Authority decides what matters now and what does not. Without authority, everything feels equally important. This is the root of anxiety. Nothing is equally important. There is always hierarchy, sequence, and timing. The mind relaxes when it knows what comes first. I have seen people regain calm simply by deciding that not everything requires immediate attention. This decision was not avoidance. It was wisdom. Wisdom does not hurry. Hurry belongs to fear. Fear always insists on immediacy. Order allows sequence. Sequence removes pressure. Pressure produces anxiety. Anxiety disappears when pressure is relieved. I have often said that man should move through life as a king moves through his kingdom, aware, attentive, but not harried. A king does not attempt to attend to every matter at once. He delegates. He trusts order. Each soul is the ruler of its own consciousness. When one abdicates this rulership, anxiety takes the throne. Reclaiming authority restores dignity. Dignity quiets the mind. The mind longs for direction. When direction is absent, it invents urgency. When direction is present, it rests. I have known those who lived in constant mental supervision, fearing they would forget something important. Yet forgetting rarely caused their troubles. Worry caused them. One must correct this gently. Harsh discipline only adds strain. Gentle certainty restores order. One may begin simply by acknowledging at intervals, "Divine intelligence directs my affairs." Say it calmly. Repetition impresses the subconscious. The subconscious obeys what is stated without fear. As this acknowledgement becomes habitual, anxiety lessens. Others notice the change. They sense steadiness. They feel less need to rush you, pressure you, or correct you. Life responds differently to ordered consciousness. I have observed that those who live under divine order are often entrusted with more responsibility, not less, yet they carry it lightly because it is placed correctly. Correct placement removes burden. Burden creates anxiety. Order removes burden. One must not confuse order with doing more. Often order requires doing less, but doing it deliberately. Deliberation calms the mind. The anxious mind leaps from task to task. The ordered mind completes one thing before moving to the next. Completion produces satisfaction. Satisfaction calms. I have known many who felt anxious because nothing ever felt finished. They carried unfinished thoughts, unfinished decisions, unfinished emotions. Once authority was restored, things began to close naturally. Closure is peaceful. Closure requires decision. Decision requires authority. Thus, authority is the foundation. Without authority, life feels scattered. With authority, life arranges itself. I have often said that peace is not found by escaping life, but by governing it correctly. Governing does not mean controlling outcomes. It means directing attention. Attention must be directed by authority, not by fear. Fear scatters attention. Order gathers it. Gathered attention feels calm. Calm restores confidence. Confidence quiets anxiety. This is the natural sequence. I have observed that once inner authority is restored, people stop apologizing for their pace. They stop explaining their choices. They move deliberately. Others respect this. Respect follows authority. Authority is felt, not announced. The anxious mind explains. The ordered mind acts. Action guided by order is effective. Effectiveness reinforces trust. Trust deepens calm. Calm stabilizes life. This is why organization begins inwardly. One may arrange every outer detail and still feel anxious if inner authority is absent. But when inner authority is present, outer details fall into place with ease. Ease is the sign of alignment. Alignment removes anxiety. Thus, the first step is always the same. Decide who governs your life. Let fear step aside. Let divine order take its rightful place. Say it calmly. Repeat it often, and you will notice something subtle but unmistakable. The mind no longer rushes, the body no longer braces, and life no longer feels scattered. Order has begun, and where order begins, anxiety has no home. When inner authority has been restored, the mind begins to sense a new calm. Yet anxiety may still attempt to return in another form. It returns disguised as urgency. Urgency is one of fear's most convincing garments. It says, "Everything matters now," and the mind, once again, feels pressed to hurry, to rush, to manage many things at once. This is why the second step toward order must be clearly understood. False urgency must be removed. Urgency is rarely real. It is usually the echo of disorder. When things are not placed, the mind believes they must all be handled immediately. Yet life does not move all at once. It moves in sequence. Sequence is the mercy of divine order. I have observed that anxiety increases whenever one believes there is no time. The belief itself produces strain. The body tightens. The breath shortens. Thought scatters. Yet time is not the enemy. Disorder is. When divine order governs, time becomes sufficient. The anxious mind believes everything is equally important. This belief alone is enough to exhaust it. Nothing is equally important. There is always a first thing, a second thing, and a time for rest in between. Hierarchy is peace. Scripture tells us plainly that there is a time for every purpose under heaven. When this law is ignored, anxiety rushes in to fill the void. I have known people who lived under constant pressure, not because their lives were demanding, but because they treated every demand as immediate. They lived as though delay were failure. Yet delay often protects. Protection frequently wears the face of postponement. When one learns to trust timing, urgency dissolves. The second step toward order is to decide that nothing will be addressed before its proper time. This decision alone calms the mind. One must say inwardly, "This does not belong to now." These words are powerful when spoken calmly. They remove false demand. They restore sequence. Sequence removes pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. I once knew a man who felt overwhelmed by responsibilities. He carried them all at once in thought, even when none required immediate action. When he learned to ask, "What belongs to this moment?" his anxiety faded. He discovered that very little belonged to the present, and what did belong could be handled easily. The mind relaxes when it knows what is required now and what is not. Anxiety thrives on vagueness. Clarity dissolves it. Clarity does not require that everything be resolved. It requires that everything be placed in time. Time is not an enemy. It is an ally when order is trusted. I have observed that people often create urgency to feel productive. They believe calm means idleness. Yet calm is not idleness. Calm is alignment. Alignment allows right action. Urgency often produces wrong action. When one acts from urgency, mistakes increase. When one acts from calm, precision returns. Precision saves time. Time saved restores peace. I have known many who rushed through decisions out of fear and later said, "I wish I had waited." Waiting would have been obedience, not delay. The anxious mind hates waiting because it believes waiting equals danger. Yet waiting guided by trust is protection. Protection does not shout. It waits. When one removes false urgency, one also removes self-condemnation. Many condemn themselves for not doing enough, not moving fast enough, not finishing everything. This condemnation fuels anxiety. Condemnation has no place in divine order. Order does not scold. It directs. The mind must learn to release the belief that speed equals worth. Worth is inherent. It is not measured by pace. I have observed that those who slow down intentionally often accomplish more. Their actions are deliberate. Their efforts are not wasted correcting haste. Haste is fear in motion. Fear never produces good order. One must learn to pause without guilt. Guilt is another form of urgency. Urgency says, "You should already be finished." Order says, "Begin where you are." Beginning where you are is peace. I once knew a woman who felt anxious because she believed she was always behind. In truth, she was ahead in some areas and exactly on time in others. Yet her belief told her she was late everywhere. When she learned to release this belief, anxiety dissolved. Belief governs experience. The belief that everything is urgent must be replaced. One may say quietly, "I am always on time under divine order." These words remove the fear of falling behind. Falling behind is an illusion born of comparison. Comparison creates urgency. Urgency feeds anxiety. Each life unfolds according place to its own design. Comparing timelines creates disorder. I have often said that no one can take your place. Your good cannot arrive too late, nor can it be stolen. This understanding removes hurry. Hurry is the child of fear. Fear is never a good counselor. When urgency is removed, priorities become visible. The mind can see clearly what belongs to now. Often, only one thing belongs to now. Handling one thing at a time restores dignity. Dignity calms the nervous system. Calm allows better judgment. Better judgment simplifies life. Simplification is organization. I have observed that when people begin to remove urgency, their speech changes. They stop apologizing for their pace. They stop explaining delays. They act deliberately. Others respond with respect. Respect is drawn to calm certainty. The anxious mind tries to please everyone quickly. The ordered mind serves rightly. Service guided by order is effective. Service driven by urgency is draining. One must trust that what is not handled now will return at the proper time. Trust is required. Without trust, urgency returns. Trust must be practiced repeatedly. Each time urgency appears, one must question it. Ask quietly, is this truly required now? Often, the answer is no. Saying no to urgency is saying yes to order. Order protects energy. Energy preserved restores joy. Joy is not frivolous. It is strength. I have seen people whose anxiety lifted simply because they gave themselves permission to move more slowly. They discovered that nothing fell apart. In fact, things improved. Fear had lied. Fear often lies about consequences. Order reveals truth. Truth is calming. The mind longs for truth, not pressure. Pressure feels real, but it is self-created. Order is real. It is lawful. When urgency is removed, anxiety has fewer places to hide. Anxiety depends on the belief that disaster will occur if one does not rush. This belief must be corrected gently. One may affirm often, I do not hurry. I am guided. These words restore sequence. Sequence removes strain. Strain produces anxiety. Thus, removing false urgency is essential. One must remember that life does not test speed. It tests alignment. Alignment cannot be rushed. Rushing breaks alignment. I have observed that those who live calmly often appear to have more time. In truth, they have not created time. They have stopped wasting it through anxiety. Anxious thought wastes energy. Energy wasted feels like lack of time. When energy is conserved, time feels abundant. Abundance of time is peace. Peace allows organization. Organization restores confidence. Confidence reduces fear. Thus, the second step supports the first. Inner authority decides pace. Fear relinquishes control. When fear no longer governs timing, anxiety loosens its grip. One must be patient with this change. Urgency has been practiced for years. It will not vanish in a day, yet each refusal weakens it. Refuse to rush. Refuse to panic. Refuse to treat everything as equal. Let order decide, and you will notice that what once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable, even simple. The mind relaxes because it knows it does not have to do everything at once. Life begins to unfold gently, one thing at a time, and anxiety, deprived of urgency, begins to fade quietly, steadily, and without struggle. When false urgency has been removed and the mind no longer believes that everything must be handled at once, another cause of anxiety reveals itself clearly: the habit of carrying what should be placed. Many people suffer not because their lives are too full, but because everything is held in the mind without distinction. Thoughts, duties, emotions, and plans are carried together, unassigned, unfinished, and unresolved. The mind was never meant to be a warehouse. The third step toward order is simple but exact. Each thing must be given its proper place. Anxiety grows when the mind holds too many unfinished matters at the same level of importance. It does not know where to rest because nothing has been assigned. Everything waits at the door, demanding attention, and the mind grows weary from constant interruption. I have often observed that peace returns not when everything is finished, but when everything is placed. Placement is not neglect, it is wisdom. When something is placed, it no longer presses. It waits quietly for its appointed time. The mind relaxes when it knows where things belong. Many believe they are anxious because they have too much to do. In truth, they are anxious because too much is being held inwardly. Duties are carried long before they are required. Conversations are replayed before they occur. Decisions are debated before they must be made. This premature carrying exhausts the mind. I once knew a woman who said, "I cannot sleep because I keep thinking of everything I must remember." When I asked her whether those things needed to be done that night, she admitted they did not. Yet she carried them as though forgetting would cause harm. When she learned to say, "This belongs to tomorrow," her sleep returned. Nothing was lost. Everything was done at the proper time. The mind does not need to remember everything at once. It needs to know that everything has a place. A well-ordered house is peaceful because each object rests where it belongs. Disorder does not mean too many objects. It means no place assigned. So it is with life. The anxious mind resembles a house where everything has been piled into one room. The weight is unbearable. Yet the solution is not to discard everything, but to place each thing where it belongs. This placing begins inwardly. One must learn to say, calmly and without guilt, "This is not for now." These words are powerful. They remove pressure without denial. Denial says, "This does not exist." Placement says, "This exists, but not here." The mind trusts placement. Trust restores calm. I have observed that when people begin to place their concerns, their anxiety lessens immediately. The mind no longer feels chased. It no longer fears forgetting, because it knows things will return when needed. This is cooperation with divine order. Order does not require that everything be handled at once. It requires that everything be handled correctly. Correct handling is placement. I have often said that one should not carry tomorrow's burdens today. This is not merely spiritual counsel. It is practical wisdom. Carrying tomorrow's burdens today produces exhaustion without progress. Progress occurs when one acts in sequence. Sequence requires placement. I have known people who carried conversations in their minds for days before they occurred. They exhausted themselves rehearsing responses. When the conversations finally happened, they were brief and simple. The suffering had occurred entirely in imagination. When such people learn to place conversations in the future and return to the present, peace returned. The present moment can carry only what belongs to it. Anything more creates strain. Strain produces anxiety. The mind must be trained to recognize when it is carrying too much. Training requires awareness, not force. One must notice when thought drifts into future or past unnecessarily and gently return it. One may say, "This does not belong to now." Say it without irritation. Irritation feeds anxiety. Calm instruction quiets it. I have observed that when people practice this discipline, their minds become orderly. Thoughts arise less frequently. When they do arise, they are purposeful. Purpose calms. The mind that knows what it is doing does not panic. Panic arises when nothing is clear. Clarity is placement. One must also learn to place emotions. Many carry emotional reactions long after events have passed. Resentments, regrets, and fears are held as though they were still present. This creates disorder. Emotions, like tasks, must be placed. What has passed belongs to the past. What has not yet occurred belongs to the future. Only what is alive now belongs to the present. The mind cannot heal what it refuses to release. Release is placement. Placing the past behind allows the present to breathe. I have known people who lived in constant anxiety because they carried old disappointments into every new situation. Their minds were never empty enough to receive new good. When they learned to say, "That is finished," peace returned. Finished things must be placed in the past. Unfinished things must be placed in the future. The present must be kept clear. Clear space is sacred. Clear space allows guidance. I have often said that divine intelligence works through empty space. It fills what is open. When the mind is crowded, guidance has no place to land. Crowding is the enemy of order. The third step toward organizing life is to create space inwardly by placing each thing where it belongs. This must be practiced repeatedly. Habitual carrying does not dissolve in a day, yet each act of placement weakens anxiety. Anxiety thrives on confusion. Placement creates clarity. Clarity calms. I have observed that when people place their concerns correctly, they begin to feel lighter. Their bodies respond. Their breathing changes. Their thoughts slow. Others notice this lightness. They feel less pressure around them. Pressure is contagious. So is peace. The one who places life correctly becomes a source of calm. I have known people whose families calmed simply because they stopped carrying everything for everyone. They trusted others to carry their own responsibilities. This is also placement. Carrying others' burdens creates resentment and fatigue. Each soul must carry its own. One must place responsibility where it belongs. Taking responsibility for others' choices creates anxiety. Release restores balance. Balance is order. Order is peace. One may affirm quietly, "Everything in my life has its appointed place." This affirmation, repeated calmly, trains the subconscious to release clutter. The subconscious obeys order. When order is impressed, anxiety loses ground. I have observed that once placement becomes habit, the mind rarely becomes overwhelmed. Even when many duties exist, they are not carried together. The mind handles one thing, then releases it. Release is rest. Rest restores strength. Strength improves perception. Perception reveals what belongs to now. Thus the cycle sustains itself. I have often said that man should travel lightly. Carrying too much delays progress. Progress does not require burden. Burden is optional. Anxiety is the signal that something is being carried unnecessarily. Respond to the signal by placing the burden down. Place it deliberately. Place it kindly. Place it without guilt. Guilt keeps things clutched. Guilt says, "You must carry this." Truth says, "You may place this." Truth is liberating. When the mind trusts truth, it relaxes. Relaxation allows intuition. Intuition guides placement effortlessly. As this step is practiced, life begins to feel manageable again. Not because there is less to do, but because nothing is being carried out of season. Season governs order. Each thing has its season. Trust the seasons of your life. Trust the placement of each duty, and you will find that anxiety fades as naturally as darkness fades when light is restored. For the mind was never meant to be crowded. It was meant to be clear, and clarity is the quiet foundation of peace. When things have been placed in their proper order, and the mind is no longer burdened with what does not belong to the present, another source of anxiety becomes visible: the habit of resistance. Many suffer not because life is unkind, but because they fight what is already in motion. Resistance scatters energy. It divides strength. It makes simple situations feel heavy and complicated. The fourth step toward order is the practice of non-resistance. Non-resistance does not mean submission to wrong conditions. It means refusal to fight appearances with fear. It is the quiet recognition that struggle feeds the very thing one wishes to remove. I have observed that anxiety often increases when people argue inwardly with what is happening. They say, "This should not be," or "This must change immediately," or "I cannot accept this." These thoughts tighten the mind and harden the situation. Resistance locks conditions in place. Acceptance loosens them. Acceptance does not approve. It allows movement. When one ceases to resist, order begins to operate. I once knew a woman who lived in constant anxiety because she opposed every inconvenience. Delays angered her. Interruptions disturbed her. Small changes unsettled her. Her mind was always braced for disappointment. When she learned to say quietly, "This, too, has its place," her anxiety softened. She discovered that many inconveniences rearranged themselves quickly once she stopped fighting them. Resistance delays resolution. Non-resistance invites solution. I have often said that what you resist persists. This is not poetic language. It is exact law. Resistance fixes attention upon the very thing one fears. Attention gives life. Fearful attention gives power to disorder. Non-resistance withdraws power. When one accepts without fear, conditions are free to change. I have known people who suffered greatly over conditions they could not immediately alter. Their suffering came not from the condition itself, but from the constant inner struggle against it. When they ceased resisting and trusted divine order to reveal the next step, relief came. Relief often precedes change. The anxious mind believes it must oppose what it dislikes. Yet opposition born of fear strengthens disorder. Order responds to calm authority. Authority does not shout. Authority rests. Non-resistance is authority. It says, "I am not frightened by this." Fearlessness loosens conditions. I have observed that when people stop arguing inwardly with circumstances, their minds become quieter, the body relaxes, thought becomes orderly, solutions appear naturally. Resistance consumes energy. Energy consumed by resistance is not available for guidance. When resistance is removed, energy returns. Returned energy restores clarity. Clarity reduces anxiety. Many believe that non-resistance will make them passive. In truth, it makes them effective. When fear is removed, action becomes precise. Precise action requires calm. Calm cannot coexist with resistance. I once knew a man who became anxious whenever plans changed. He felt out of control. Yet life often rearranged itself for his benefit through unexpected changes. His anxiety came from clinging to fixed outcomes. When he learned to accept change without fear, he discovered that changes often improved his affairs. Fear of change creates anxiety. Trust in order dissolves it. Change is not the enemy of order. Fear is. Order is flexible. Rigidity creates strain. Strain produces anxiety. I have often said that one must be willing to be surprised by good. Surprise requires openness. Openness cannot exist where resistance rules. Resistance closes doors. Non-resistance opens them. The fourth step requires practice, because resistance is often unconscious. It appears as irritation, frustration, or worry. These are signals that one is opposing something inwardly. When such signals appear, one must pause. Pause is power. In the pause, one may say, "I do not resist. I trust the working of divine order." These words quiet the mind. Quiet allows movement. Movement resolves conditions. I have observed that when people adopt non-resistance, others respond differently to them. Conflicts diminish, conversations soften, situations that once escalated dissolve quickly. Peace is persuasive. Anxious resistance provokes opposition. Calm acceptance invites cooperation. This is why non-resistant people often appear fortunate. In truth, they are aligned. Alignment removes friction. Friction produces heat. Heat creates agitation. Agitation is anxiety. When friction is removed, life flows. Flow restores ease. Ease is not laziness. It is efficiency. I have known people who accomplished much more once they stopped fighting every difficulty. They conserved energy and used it wisely. Wisdom arises when fear is absent. Fear clouds judgment. Judgment clouded creates disorder. Non-resistance clears vision. Vision reveals right action. Right action resolves anxiety. I have often said that divine intelligence can juggle situations far better than the human mind. Yet many refuse to let go of control long enough for this to occur. Control is often resistance disguised as responsibility. Responsibility guided by fear is heavy. Responsibility guided by trust is light. Light. Responsibility does not burden the mind. The mind relaxes when it trusts a higher order. Trust dissolves anxiety. Non-resistance is not weakness. It is alignment with law. Law does not fight appearances. It rearranges them. Rearrangement requires space. Resistance fills space with tension. Non-resistance creates space for order to act. I have seen conditions dissolve simply because someone stopped fearing them. When fear withdrew, the condition lost its hold. Fear feeds disorder. Calm starves it. The practice of non-resistance must be gentle. Harsh attempts to let go create new resistance. One must release without force. Force is resistance turned inward. Gentleness dissolves fear. I have observed that when people begin to practice non-resistance, sleep improves. The body no longer braces against imagined threats. Rest restores strength. Strength improves trust. Trust sustains non-resistance. This step also organizes relationships. Many anxieties arise from trying to control others' responses. When one stops resisting people as they are, relationships settle. Peaceful presence invites respectful behavior. Fearful control invites conflict. One must release the need to correct everything immediately. Correction guided by fear creates disorder. Correction, guided by wisdom, arrives at the right time. Timing matters. Non-resistance trusts timing. I have known parents whose anxiety diminished when they stopped resisting their children's growth. They trusted guidance to unfold naturally. Harmony returned. Resistance often arises from fear of loss, yet there is no loss in divine mind. This affirmation is essential. There is no loss in divine mind. When this truth is accepted, resistance fades. Fear of loss produces clinging. Clinging produces anxiety. Trust releases. Release restores peace. The fourth step, practiced consistently, brings remarkable calm. Life no longer feels like an enemy to be battled. It becomes a field to be navigated with confidence. Navigation requires awareness, not struggle. Awareness arises in stillness. Stillness grows when resistance ends. I have often said that the battle is never with conditions, but with fear of conditions. When fear is removed, conditions yield. Yielding is not defeat, it is cooperation. Cooperation with divine order produces harmony. Harmony quiets the mind. The mind that no longer fights life becomes organized naturally. Each experience takes its place. Each challenge becomes a lesson. Each lesson strengthens trust. Trust removes anxiety. Thus non-resistance is essential to organization. Without it, order cannot be sustained. With it, life flows smoothly, even when challenges appear, and one discovers that calm is not something to be defended, but something that grows stronger with every act of trust. For peace is not fragile. It is the natural state of a mind aligned with divine order, when resistance has been released and the mind no longer struggles against conditions. Another source of anxiety becomes apparent: divided speech. Many people unknowingly undo inner order through careless words. They speak peace while expecting trouble, speak faith while rehearsing fear, speak hope while preparing for disappointment. This division fractures consciousness and restores confusion. The fifth step toward order is the discipline of unified speech. I have often said that your word is your wand. It carries creative power whether you are attentive or careless. Words spoken repeatedly impress the subconscious, and the subconscious governs conditions. Therefore, disorder in speech produces disorder in life. An anxious person is often one whose words contradict one another. They say, "I trust," yet add, "but I don't know what will happen." They say, "Everything will work out," yet conclude with, "if nothing goes wrong." The mind hears the final command. The subconscious does not analyze intent. It responds to repetition. When speech is mixed, results are delayed. When speech is unified, results flow. I have observed that many people experience anxiety because they speak their fears aloud throughout the day, then wonder why those fears seem to follow them. Fear spoken becomes instruction. Instruction repeated becomes law. Law produces results. This is not punishment. It is obedience. Life obeys the dominant word. The anxious mind uses words to relieve tension by expressing worry. Yet expression of worry strengthens it. Speaking fear does not release it, it anchors it. Silence is often wiser than fearful speech. When one must speak, let speech be ordered. Ordered speech restores inner authority. I once knew a woman who complained constantly about lack. She did not realize she was training her mind to expect it. When she learned to speak only of supply, her circumstances shifted. Her anxiety diminished before her conditions changed. Peace precedes manifestation. One must learn to guard speech gently but firmly. This is the work of the watchman at the gate. The watchman does not fight thoughts. He selects words. Thoughts arise automatically. Words are chosen deliberately. Deliberate words reshape thought. Reshaped thought restores order. I have observed that when people commit to unified speech, their minds calm almost immediately. The inner conflict ends. There is no longer a tug of war between hope and fear. Conflict produces anxiety. Unity produces peace. Unified speech means speaking only what one desires to experience. This does not require pretending. It requires alignment. Alignment says, I speak from truth, not appearance. Appearance often contradicts truth. Truth must be spoken calmly until appearance yields. I have often said that appearances are shadows. Words shape substance. The anxious mind believes it must speak what it sees. The ordered mind speaks what it knows. Knowing dissolves anxiety. I have known people who stopped speaking of illness and began affirming wholeness. Their fear subsided before their health improved. I have known people who stopped speaking of delay and began affirming divine order. Their anxiety faded even while circumstances rearranged. Words create atmosphere. Atmosphere affects behavior. Behavior influences outcomes. Thus, speech is foundational. One must be patient with this discipline. Years of careless speech cannot be undone in a day. Yet every corrected word weakens anxiety. Anxiety thrives on repetition. Replace fearful repetition with truth. Truth repeated becomes conviction. Conviction calms. Calm organizes. I have observed that people who guard their words become more poised. Others listen. Respect follows coherence. Coherence arises when words align with belief. Belief stabilizes when speech is consistent. I have often advised people to choose a single affirmation and repeat it until fear dissolves. For example, I am under grace in perfect ways. These words correct fear gently. Or, I cast this burden on the Christ within and go free. Such words release strain. Repetition is essential. One utterance does little. Repeated utterance rewires expectation. Expectation governs experience. Anxiety often persists because fear has been repeated more faithfully than truth. Faithfulness determines results. One must become faithful to right words. It is selection. Choose words that support order. Avoid words that scatter. Words like always, never, everything is wrong create confusion. Replace them with calm truth. Truth simplifies. Simplicity calms. I have observed that when people change their speech, their environments change. Conversations improve. Opportunities appear. Relationships soften. The world responds to tone. Anxious tone invites chaos. Confident tone invites order. Unified speech produces confident tone. One must also avoid explaining fear. Explanation gives it importance. Importance feeds anxiety. Truth does not require explanation. Speak it simply. I have often said that a calm mind does not argue. Arguing reinforces doubt. Unified speech ends. Argument. One may say quietly, I speak words of order and peace. Let these words become habit. Habit creates character. Character shapes destiny. Destiny organized removes anxiety. When speech becomes orderly, the mind follows. The mind trusts consistency. Consistency builds confidence. Confidence dissolves fear. I have observed that when people commit to this discipline, they feel lighter, their inner dialogue softens. They stop rehearsing disaster. Others notice the change. They say, you seem different. You seem calmer. This outward recognition confirms inner order. Unified speech also clarifies intuition. When the mind is not cluttered with fear-filled words, guidance is easier to hear. Guidance directs action. Right action organizes life. Thus, speech is not trivial. It is structural. Disordered speech creates disordered life. Ordered speech creates ordered experience. Anxiety fades when the mind no longer contradicts itself. Peace grows when truth is spoken consistently. One must remember that words spoken silently carry power as well. Inner speech matters. Guard it gently. Correct it kindly. Harsh correction creates resistance. Gentle redirection restores alignment. When fearful words arise inwardly, replace them calmly. Say, this is not my word. Then choose truth. Truth repeated impresses the subconscious. The subconscious obeys faithfully. Faithful obedience produces harmony. Harmony quiets the mind. Thus, the fifth step builds upon the previous ones. Authority decides pace. Placement clears clutter. Non-resistance frees movement. Unified speech sustains order. Without it, anxiety returns. With it, peace deepens. And one discovers that life responds not to effort, but to coherence. Coherence is calm made visible. Calm is power. And power, when ordered, removes anxiety entirely. When speech has been unified and the mind no longer contradicts itself through careless words, another subtle cause of anxiety becomes visible. The habit of self-direction instead of divine direction. Many people organize their lives outwardly, speak calm words, and yet remain anxious because they insist on planning every step by human reasoning alone. They forget that order is not invented, it is revealed. The sixth step toward true organization is to follow the magic path of intuition. Intuition is not imagination. It is not impulse. It is not emotion. It is the quiet knowing that arises when the mind is orderly and fear has been removed. Anxiety often signals that one is attempting to decide without guidance. I have observed that people become anxious when they try to force decisions prematurely. They say, "I must know now," when the next step has not yet been revealed. Anxiety rushes in because the mind is operating without instruction. Divine intelligence always reveals one step at a time. Trying to see the entire path at once produces strain. Strain produces anxiety. I have often said that man makes mistakes by reasoning instead of listening. Reasoning has its place, but intuition governs timing and direction. When intuition is ignored, life feels heavy. When intuition is followed, life feels simple. I once knew a woman who was anxious about her work. She analyzed endlessly, weighing every possibility. Nothing felt right. When she finally became still and asked for guidance without expectation, her anxiety dissolved immediately, even before results appeared. Peace precedes proof. Intuition always brings peace. If an idea brings agitation, it is not intuition. Anxiety is not guidance. The mind often confuses urgency with inspiration. Inspiration is calm. Calm ideas unfold naturally. Forced ideas exhaust. The anxious mind believes intuition must shout. In truth, it whispers. One must be quiet enough to hear it. Quiet cannot exist where anxiety rules. This is why order must precede intuition. When the mind is cluttered, guidance cannot be heard. When order is restored, guidance becomes clear. I have observed that people who trust intuition make fewer mistakes. They appear fortunate, yet they are simply obedient. Obedience to intuition saves time. Time saved restores peace. I have often said that the magic path of intuition leads one around obstacles instead of through them. Anxiety arises when one insists on walking straight into resistance. Resistance signals wrong direction. Peace signals right direction. Intuition reveals the path of least resistance. Least resistance does not mean ease. Without effort, it means effort aligned with law. Aligned effort feels light. Misaligned effort feels heavy. Heavy effort produces anxiety. I have known people who ignored intuition because it seemed too simple. They chose complicated paths and suffered delay. When they returned to the simple guidance they first received, order returned. Intuition is often simple. The mind distrusts simplicity, yet simplicity is the mark of truth. I have observed that intuition often directs one to do small, ordinary things. These acts seem insignificant, yet they unlock larger movements. Anxiety fades when one takes the next right step, no matter how small. Movement dissolves fear when guided. Movement without guidance increases it. One must learn to distinguish between nervous impulse and intuitive direction. Nervous impulse feels hurried. Intuitive direction feels settled. Settled feelings restore order. I have often advised people to test guidance by its effect on the mind. If the thought brings calm assurance, follow it. If it brings agitation, wait. Waiting guided by trust is not delay. Delay born of fear is resistance. Intuition requires trust. Trust grows with practice. Each time one follows intuition, confidence increases. Confidence dissolves anxiety. I have observed that people who honor intuition sleep better. Their minds no longer race because they trust direction to appear when needed. Trust releases the need to control. Control produces anxiety. Release restores peace. Intuition also organizes time. When guided, one finds that tasks fit naturally into the day. There is no rushing, no scrambling. Rushing indicates misalignment. Alignment produces rhythm. Rhythm calms the nervous system. I have known people who struggled with decisions until they learned to wait for the feeling of rightness. When it came, action was easy. Ease is a sign of alignment. Ease is not laziness. Ease is cooperation. I have often said that God makes a way where there is no way. This way is revealed through intuition. Reason sees obstacles. Intuition sees openings. Anxiety sees only danger. Trust sees order. One must give intuition authority. Authority means obedience. Obedience must be calm. Fearful obedience creates tension. Calm obedience produces harmony. I have observed that when people begin to trust intuition, others respond positively. Opportunities arise. Timing improves. Resistance diminishes. Life responds to alignment. Alignment begins inwardly. The sixth step requires patience. Intuition does not operate on demand. It responds to readiness. Readiness comes from order. When order is established, intuition speaks clearly. One must resist the urge to force guidance. Forcing silences it. Gentle listening invites it. I have often advised people to ask for guidance and then release the question. Anxiety clings to questions. Trust releases them. Release allows answers to appear. Answers appear naturally. I have seen people receive guidance while resting, walking, or doing simple tasks. The mind was relaxed, not searching. Searching creates tension. Receiving requires openness. Openness dissolves anxiety. Intuition also organizes relationships. It directs when to speak, when to wait, when to act. Anxiety arises when one speaks too soon or waits too long. Guidance restores timing. Timing prevents regret. Regret feeds anxiety. Thus, intuition is essential to sustained order. Without it, one relies on effort. Effort without guidance exhausts. Guided effort restores joy. Joy strengthens trust. Trust deepens intuition. This cycle sustains peace. One may affirm often, I am divinely guided. I make right decisions at the right time. These words impress the subconscious. The subconscious obeys guidance. Obedience produces order. Order removes anxiety. As this step becomes habitual, life feels lighter. Decisions no longer paralyze. Paths open naturally. One discovers that one does not need to know everything, only the next step. The next step is always enough. Enough removes fear. Fear dissolves when trust is established. Thus, the sixth step builds upon all that came before. Authority sets pace. Placement clears clutter. Non-resistance allows flow. Unified speech sustains order. Intuition directs movement. And anxiety, deprived of confusion, urgency, contradiction, and fear, has little ground left to stand on. Peace becomes the natural state, not because life is perfect, but because it is guided, and guidance, once trusted, never fails. When intuition has been trusted, and the mind has learned to move one step at a time, guided rather than driven, there remains one final source of anxiety that must be addressed if order is to be permanent: the habit of holding burdens instead of casting them. Many people organize their thoughts, their time, their speech, and their actions, yet still feel a quiet strain beneath it all. This strain comes from believing they must carry responsibility for outcomes. The seventh step toward complete order is the conscious casting of the burden. I have often said, Cast the burden on the Christ within and go free. These words are not poetry, they are law. Until the burden is truly cast, anxiety will find a place to remain. Many believe they have surrendered when they have merely paused their worry. True surrender is not temporary relief. It is transfer of responsibility. Anxiety survives wherever responsibility is misplaced. Responsibility for effort belongs to man. Responsibility for outcome belongs to God. When these are confused, the mind strains. Strain produces anxiety. I have observed that people often say, "I trust," while still secretly managing results. They plan every contingency, prepare for disappointment, and brace for loss. It is vigilance disguised as faith. Vigilance exhausts, trust restores. One must learn to let go of outcomes deliberately. Deliberate surrender is an act of authority, not weakness. Authority says, "This is no longer mine to carry." When the burden is cast, the mind feels an immediate lightness. The body responds. Breath deepens. Shoulders relax. Thought slows. These are signs of correct transfer. I have known people who lived in anxiety because they believed everything depended on them. When they learned to release this belief, life reorganized swiftly. Life responds eagerly when allowed to do its work. Interference delays resolution. Anxiety is interference made habitual. I have often observed that people who cast their burdens sleep better. Sleep is a sign of trust. The body will not rest if the mind believes danger is imminent. Rest signals safety. Safety calms the mind. The mind must be taught that it is safe to let go. Teaching requires repetition. One must cast the burden repeatedly until the subconscious accepts the truth. This is why affirmations are essential. One may say often, calmly and without strain, "I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free." These words must be spoken with conviction, not pleading. Pleading keeps the burden. Conviction releases it. I have observed that anxiety often returns when people reclaim the burden after surrendering it. They say, "I trust," then resume worry the next moment. This reclaiming must be noticed. When it occurs, one must gently release again. Release is a practice. Practice creates habit. Habit becomes character. Character shapes destiny. One must also release responsibility for others' reactions, choices, and timing. Many live in anxiety because they carry the emotional weight of other people's lives. Each soul must walk its own path. Carrying others' burdens creates imbalance. Imbalance produces anxiety. Release restores order. I have known parents whose anxiety faded when they trusted divine order to guide their children. They abandoned fear. Care guided by trust is calm. Care guided by fear is exhausting. I have often said that there is no loss in divine mind. This truth is essential to surrender. Fear of loss keeps burdens clutched. When one accepts that nothing real can be lost, release becomes possible. Anxiety thrives on fear of loss. Trust dissolves it. I have observed that people who truly surrender outcomes appear serene, even in uncertainty. Others feel this serenity and draw strength from it. Serenity commands respect. Respect follows inner order. Casting the burden also restores joy. Joy is not frivolous. It is the natural state of one who is not carrying what does not belong to them. Burdened minds cannot feel joy. Released minds can. I have often said that man's work is to be obedient, not anxious. Obedience guided by trust is peaceful. Anxiety indicates misplaced responsibility. The final step is therefore not an action, but a posture of being. One must live from surrender. Living from surrender does not mean inaction. It means action without strain. Action without strain is powerful. Strained action wastes energy. Energy wasted feels like anxiety. Energy conserved restores vitality. Vitality strengthens confidence. Confidence dissolves fear. I have observed that people who cast their burdens make better decisions. They are not hurried. They are not pressured. They listen before acting. Listening invites guidance. Guidance ensures order. Order sustains peace. One must be patient with this step. Years of carrying burdens cannot be undone instantly. Yet each sincere act of surrender weakens anxiety. Anxiety cannot survive where trust is practiced daily. Trust must be renewed each morning and evening. One must begin the day by casting burdens. One must end the day by releasing outcomes. Night is not meant for problem solving. It is meant for restoration. Restoration requires surrender. I have often advised people to say before sleep, I have done my part. Divine intelligence now takes charge. These words quiet the mind. Quiet allows rest. Rest heals. Healing restores order. I have seen lives transformed by this simple practice. Circumstances changed, not because people worked harder, but because they stopped interfering. Interference is fear in disguise. Non-interference is trust made visible. When one ceases interference, life flows. Flow removes anxiety. Thus, the final step completes the cycle. Authority sets pace. Placement clears clutter. Non-resistance allows movement. Unified speech sustains coherence. Intuition directs action. Surrender releases strain. Together, these steps restore divine order. Order is not rigid, it is alive. It adapts without chaos. It moves without fear. When order governs life, anxiety has no function. It fades naturally. Peace becomes steady, not because nothing ever goes wrong, but because nothing is carried alone. One discovers that life is not something to manage anxiously, but something to cooperate with intelligently. Cooperation is ease. Ease is confidence. Confidence is calm. And calm is the mark of a life truly organized under grace in perfect ways. For when the burden is cast and order is restored, the soul remembers what it always knew, that it was never meant to carry the world, only to walk through it, guided, protected, and at peace.